September 3rd, 1941. Paris, France. The city is a strange mixture of shadows and sunlight, its streets lined with ration queues and posters proclaiming German victories. From the narrow windows of an unremarkable apartment on Rue de la Pampa, a woman sits at a small wooden table, her posture rigid but careful, a pencil in one hand, a notebook in the other. Outside, the muted rumble of trains reaches her ears through the walls and streets, a rhythm that would have been meaningless to anyone else. To her, it is a pulse, a heartbeat of the German war machine, steady, predictable, and utterly vulnerable if one knows how to read it. She is unassuming, easily overlooked. Her hair is pulled back into a simple knot, her clothes plain, as though she were a secretary or a clerk rather than the single most vital observer of enemy logistics in the occupied city. Passers-by see only a quiet woman sitting by the window. Yet each figure of German soldiers marching below, each black locomotive inching into the rail yard, carries a story she is determined to tell. Every freight car is a letter in a secret alphabet. Every train a sentence that, when decoded, will reveal the weaknesses of a sprawling army. She records the numbers with the same care as a poet transcribing lines of verse. Yet the stakes could not be higher. Discovery would mean death. The rail yard stretches below her apartment, a chaotic tangle of rails and sidings, punctuated by black engines and brown freight cars. Soldiers stride along the platforms, barking orders, carrying rifles that glint in the sunlight. Freight cars creak under the weight of supplies, ammunition, and occasionally mysterious cargo. From a distance, the scene appears ordinary, mundane even. But through her eyes, every car is a signal, every engine a key to a larger strategy. She counts systematically. She records the types of cargo, the number of wagons, even the markings on each car, details that to any casual observer would appear obsessive or trivial. Yet these small, precise observations allow her to see patterns invisible to generals who rely only on reports and guesses. Her work is methodical, almost ritualistic. At first light, she peers through binoculars, sketching diagrams of the yard, noting the movements of the trains, the shifts of guards, the schedules that determine when each supply convoy arrives. Midday, she compares her notes, recalculates totals, and verifies numbers against the previous day. Evenings are spent encoding her findings, writing them in ciphers that will later travel across the channel to Allied intelligence. Each time she finishes a page, she leans back, exhausted, yet aware that her work has just begun. The paradox is crushing. She is invisible in plain sight. To the occupying forces, she is nothing. To the Allies, she is everything. There is fear always. A misstep could expose her. The Gestapo patrols the streets relentlessly, their presence a constant, silent threat. The sound of boots on cobblestones makes her heart tighten. Every knock on the door, every unexpected visitor is a potential death sentence. Yet she has learned to mask terror with routine. Her calm is a weapon as powerful as her intelligence work. She moves as though she belongs entirely to the ordinary rhythms of the city, buying bread at the corner boulangerie, exchanging pleasantries with neighbors, observing the curfews without complaint. Each mundane act is a layer of protection, a camouflage against suspicion. She is not a soldier, nor trained in espionage, yet her mind works like the finest intelligence network. She sees connections where others see chaos. She understands logistics in a way that generals often cannot. For weeks, she has watched patterns emerge. Supply trains that depart on Tuesdays, ammunition shipments always routed through specific sidings, troop reinforcements arriving just after nightfall. These details are invisible to the enemy because they assume no one is watching. She thrives in this blind spot, turning invisibility into power. Every number she records is a weapon. Every observation becomes leverage in a conflict far larger than herself. The apartment around her is sparse, almost ascetic. A single lamp casts a cone of light over the notebook, illuminating meticulous columns of figures, sketches of freight cars, and marginal notes that decode the meaning of each observation. On the wall, A small calendar marks the passing days, but its squares are filled with symbols only she understands. The hum of a nearby tram punctuates the quiet. The faint smell of bread from the boulangerie below drifts upward, mingling with the metallic scent of the rail yard. These sensory details, trivial to an ordinary observer, are threads she weaves into a larger tapestry of understanding. Each sound, each scent, each shadow informs her analysis, revealing subtle changes in enemy behavior that might otherwise go unnoticed. She reflects on the paradox of her situation. The most potent acts of war do not always happen on battlefields or in grand maneuvers. Sometimes, the decisive moments are found in observation, in quiet labor, in a woman counting trains from a tiny window while the world below marches toward destruction. Her courage is not in wielding a gun or leading a battalion. It is in patience, in intellect, in the willingness to endure fear and monotony for the sake of a larger purpose. And yet, she knows that if discovered, history might not remember her as a hero at all. Her anonymity is both shield and burden, a constant tension that shapes every moment. The room grows dimmer as afternoon light fades. She leans closer to the window, pencil scratching furiously across the page. A black locomotive enters the yard, hauling crates marked with symbols she has learned to recognize. She notes the sequence, the type of cars, the number of wagons, the estimated cargo. Each observation will later allow Allied planners to strike supply lines, delay reinforcements, and save countless lives on the front. She is aware of the moral weight of her work, that her quiet acts of counting and recording ripple across the continent, shaping the fate of nations and individuals alike. And then there is a sudden, terrifying moment. A soldier pauses beneath her window, scanning the street as though sensing the presence of something hidden. She freezes, heart hammering, mind calculating contingencies. The soldier moves on, unaware, and she exhales slowly, pencil trembling in her hand. This is the constant paradox of her existence. Life and death stakes hidden behind a veil of ordinary routine. One wrong move, one glance, one sound could unravel everything. Yet she continues, because she knows the consequences of inaction are far greater than the dangers of being discovered. Night falls, but her work is far from over. She encodes her notes, wraps them carefully, and prepares to send them across the channel. Each report carries lives and strategy in equal measure. She thinks briefly of the soldiers whose positions will shift because of her numbers, of the civilians who might avoid destruction, and of the armies that will stumble because she observed, recorded, and interpreted. She is at once powerless and omnipotent, a single figure whose small acts carry monumental consequences. As the city sleeps under the shadow of occupation, she closes her notebook for the night. Her eyes linger on the rail yard one last time. The trains are still, but she knows the rhythm will continue tomorrow, and she will continue with it. In the quiet, she reflects on the paradox of her life. Invisible, yet indispensable. Ordinary, yet extraordinary. The numbers she records will shape battles, yet history may never know her name. And in that thought lies a tension, a haunting question. How many wars are truly won by the unseen, by those whose courage is measured not in guns or medals, but in observation, intellect, and the quiet endurance of fear? November 12, 1942. London, England. The city hums with tension, a restless energy that seems to seep from the fog-laden streets and into the offices of intelligence headquarters tucked behind heavy, blackened doors. Paper rustles in the dim light, telegraphs click in the background, and the scent of ink and coal lingers in the air. In a small, cluttered room, a young officer leans over a stack of intercepted reports, his eyes scanning columns of numbers with a mixture of disbelief and awe. Each figure represents a puzzle, and within it, the invisible hand of a woman in occupied Paris, counting trains and decoding the enemy's lifeblood. The reports arrive in bursts, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, depending on the reliability of couriers and the vagaries of wartime travel. They are coded, precise, and at first glance, almost incomprehensible. But slowly, patterns emerge. Supply lines, troop movements, and ammunition shipments unfold like a hidden map under the careful scrutiny of Allied analysts. The young officer traces his finger across the pages, noting the synchronization of trains, the frequency of convoys, and the subtle irregularities that betray the enemy's overconfidence. Each number is a key, each sequence a door to a strategy that could cripple divisions thousands of miles away. Across the room, a radio operator listens for coded signals, marking the time and frequency of transmissions. Every sound, every variation, is cross-referenced against the reports. Outside, the city is a world under siege, yet inside these walls, ordinary humans, civilians, clerks, and clerical officers, wield intellect as their weapon. The paradox is striking. In the midst of a total war, the decisive advantage does not come from tanks or artillery, but from observation, calculation, and courage. A single woman, unknown to most, has transformed information into a weapon more powerful than many battalions. The officer studies one report in particular, a record of freight cars moving from northern France to the Ardennes. The numbers are precise: 21 flatbeds, 14 boxcars, 8 tankers, each marked with cargo types deciphered through careful observation. This report allows planners to anticipate the movement of fuel and ammunition, pinpoint choke points along rail lines, and schedule precise air raids that disrupt supply chains without alerting the enemy. It is a masterclass in indirect warfare. The enemy's strength becomes its own vulnerability, exposed by someone who observes quietly from a window, armed only with a notebook and meticulous attention. In London, a small team of analysts works tirelessly to interpret the data. They cross-reference her observations with aerial reconnaissance, intercepted communications, and reports from resistance networks across France and Belgium. Each piece of the puzzle confirms the reliability of her work. She has noticed details that professional spies overlooked: the exact type of markings on tank cars, the sequence of departure times, even subtle variations in the guards' routines. These minute observations allow the Allies to predict the enemy's next moves, strike with surgical precision, and, in effect, turn the German army against itself. There is tension in every moment. The reports are valuable, fragile, and irreplaceable. If intercepted by the enemy, they would expose not only the woman in Paris, but the entire network of informants and operatives across occupied Europe. Each courier, each encrypted dispatch, carries with it the weight of potential disaster. Yet within the walls of this intelligence room, the analysts move with a quiet urgency, aware that every delay, every miscalculation, could have consequences measured in lives. The room is filled with a peculiar blend of fear and exhilaration, a recognition that ordinary people are performing extraordinary feats under unimaginable pressure. The young officer leans back in his chair and imagines the scene across the channel. A woman crouched by a window, counting trains as soldiers march below, scribbling numbers with a pencil that is at once humble and lethal. There is a strange intimacy to this connection, a human thread linking London to Paris across the chaos of war. He understands, in a way, the courage it takes to remain invisible in plain sight, to carry knowledge that can alter the course of history while remaining unknown, uncelebrated, and unarmed. The paradox of heroism is evident. The most decisive acts of war may never appear in dispatches or medals, and the quietest individuals can wield the greatest influence. Outside, the city of London braces itself against bombing raids and rationing, unaware of the intricate dance of numbers shaping battles across Europe. Inside the intelligence headquarters, officers and analysts work in hushed coordination, translating observation into action. Orders are drafted, plans are revised, and air raids are scheduled with meticulous care. The data provided by the woman counting trains allows commanders to exploit German vulnerabilities, striking at fuel depots, rail junctions, and supply convoys at the precise moment they are most exposed. Lives are saved, victories are won, yet the contributions of the observer remain invisible. The officer studies a map on the wall, tracing the routes highlighted by the reports. He notices the precision of her calculations. Supply trains disrupted in one region create cascading shortages in another. Artillery units run low on ammunition. Infantry divisions stall without reinforcements, and the German army's rhythm falters. A single window in Paris, a pencil and notebook, has introduced chaos into the seemingly invincible machinery of occupation. The human mind, he realizes, can match or exceed the power of any weapon when guided by courage, patience, and insight. As the day stretches into night, reports continue to arrive, each one confirming and expanding upon her observations. The analysts work tirelessly, decoding, cross-referencing, and transmitting instructions to operational units in the field. The stakes are monumental, yet there is a peculiar beauty in the precision of it all, the harmony of intelligence, observation, and action converging to create a decisive advantage. The young officer feels a mixture of awe and responsibility, knowing that history is being shaped not only by generals and soldiers, but by those who quietly persist, unseen and unheralded. And then there is a moment of fear. A courier is delayed, an encrypted report arrives late, and a miscommunication threatens to disrupt a planned strike. The room holds its breath, calculations are rechecked, and contingency plans are enacted. It is a reminder that even the best-laid strategies are fragile, dependent on human endurance, precision, and courage. The woman in Paris, unknown to those she aids, embodies this fragility and strength simultaneously. She operates on the knife's edge of exposure, her intellect and bravery a counterbalance to the dangers of discovery. By midnight, the room is silent except for the soft scratching of pencils and the faint hum of machinery. The officer pauses to reflect on the paradox of her heroism. Invisible, yet indispensable. Civilian, yet shaping the outcomes of battles. Unarmed, yet capable of crippling an army through nothing more than observation, calculation, and courage. He writes a memo summarizing the latest intelligence, careful to omit her name and location, protecting her identity even as her work continues to save lives. In a war that prizes medals and public recognition, the most vital contributions often go unnoticed, a truth both humbling and haunting. The night deepens, and London sleeps uneasily under the shadow of conflict. In Paris, the woman closes her notebook, exhausted but resolute, unaware of the full extent of her impact. Across the channel, the officers and analysts work with the information she has risked her life to gather. Battles will be fought tomorrow, supply lines disrupted, victories achieved, yet her role will remain unacknowledged for decades. The paradox of heroism is complete. The smallest acts of observation, performed quietly and diligently, wield power beyond imagination. And in that realization lies a lingering question. How many wars are shaped by those the world will never know? And how many victories are owed to the unseen hands that guide the course of history? May 8th, 1945. Berlin, Germany. The city is a shattered mosaic of smoke, rubble, and flags draped over crumbling facades. Soldiers march through streets littered with debris. Citizens emerge cautiously from basements, and the echoes of distant artillery have finally ceased. Victory parades are being planned, speeches written, medals polished. A world eager to celebrate heroes who commanded armies, who fired guns, who stood at the forefront of history. But in a quiet apartment hundreds of miles away, a different story lingers in shadows, one that will never appear on banners or in official dispatches. In Paris, the woman who counted trains sits alone, her notebook now neatly stacked on a shelf. The war that she helped shape is over, but recognition has not arrived. Her work, the countless hours spent observing, recording, and calculating, remains invisible to the public eye. Governments celebrate generals, broadcast speeches about decisive battles, and memorialize names engraved on stone. Yet the silent victories achieved through her intelligence are acknowledged only in the quiet, dusty archives where her reports were filed. The paradox is bitter. The very actions that may have hastened the end of the war remain uncredited, a hidden truth behind a world eager for simplicity and spectacle. She reflects on the years of vigilance, the evenings spent hunched over a window, the pencil scratching in rhythm with the trains below. Each observation, once considered insignificant, now reads like a chronicle of quiet heroism. Freight cars, she documented, carried not only ammunition and supplies, but also the lifeblood of an army whose logistical flaws would eventually cost countless soldiers' lives. Her courage was measured not in bullets or bombs, but in patience, intellect, and the capacity to endure fear without faltering. Yet the world will remember the victories of generals, not the calculations of an unarmed woman whose eyes were sharper than any weapon. Across Europe, historians begin to piece together the invisible threads she left behind. Archival reports, when cross-referenced with battle outcomes, reveal that entire operations were influenced by her meticulous counting and record-keeping. Rail lines disrupted, supply depots bombed, reinforcements delayed. All decisions hinged on the intelligence she provided. Her work, though uncelebrated, had tangible effects. Divisions starved for fuel, tanks immobilized, troops delayed in critical offensives. A silent hand had guided the course of battles, shaping outcomes that commanders on the front lines would later claim as their own. The city around her, still recovering from occupation and bombardment, moves on. People rebuild homes, reopen shops, and commemorate soldiers whose names are etched into memory. Yet her life continues quietly, largely unchanged in routine, but irrevocably altered by the burden and knowledge of her wartime contribution. The paradox remains. She is both a part of history and apart from it. The streets she once observed with deadly precision now bustle with ordinary life, and the trains that once dictated the rhythm of her days lie dormant, replaced by civilian schedules and the slow pulse of peace. There is an odd sense of liberation in this anonymity.